Tonight on America's Dumbest Criminals, is this any way to tell your girlfriend that you really want to work things out? Have you ever underestimated the crime-fighting force of meter-maids as this bank robber did? Sit, stay, and watch America's Dumbest Criminals.
Delta 1566, give me a call on your primary.
Now, welcome your host for America's Dumbest Criminals, Daniel Butler and Debbie Allen.
Everywhere I go, people ask me one question.
They do?
Yes, they do.
Is it, why do you always torment your sweet little co-host?
No, I've never been asked that.
Oh,
No.
nuts. Well, what's your question?
Everybody asks me, wow, what's a wild night for Debbie Allen like?
You gotta be kidding.
No, they do. But come on, give us an answer. Come on, humor me.
Okay, it would be 3 hours alone in a bookstore.
Whoa, okay. I've been telling them nude shuffleboard. I'm sorry. That's it?
Please.
Really?
Or triple coupon night at the grocery store.
Wow.
That's a good one, too.
All
now,
right.
I assume you're asking this because of a story coming up a little bit later about a group of women who threw a very wild party.
No, it just seemed like a good way to embarrass you. I know.
That worked.
Yeah, but speaking of embarrassing, you've got every reason to roll your eyes at the guys in our first story.
They thought they'd erased every trace of their trail, but their attempt left an indelible image. Here's this week's unforgettable chapter of Caught on Camera.
What happened was on November 24th, 1997, we had a bank robbery at the Orange County Federal Credit Union. It was late in the afternoon. Business was about ready to close when 4 armed subjects came into the bank and basically terrorized everybody. They got a substantial amount of currency. They escaped from the location and got into a waiting Ford Explorer. This vehicle was tracked by our helicopter approximately 25 miles away into a suburban area of Los Angeles in the city of Paramount. Officers closed in on the area. Well, the vehicle was followed into the garage area of this rather large apartment complex. And it appears that they were in the middle of what is called a vehicle switch, where they'll switch the money and suspects from one car to another. When the officers got on scene, they found both vehicles, but none of the suspects. We found a large wastebasket full of water where the money had been dumped, apparently in an attempt to try to avoid any type of dive bombs or other devices that might be in there. We immediately surrounded the place with a number of armed officers with shotguns and dogs and went on to do basically an apartment-to-apartment search. And lo and behold, one of our officers notices a couple coming out of the complex. And what attracted his attention to him was the gentleman who was with them was a rather large guy wearing a too small coat jacket, a red football-type jersey, some baggy pants, and some pink, fuzzy woman's bedroom slippers. Even for California, this is kind of a real fashion risk that he's taken. He basically questioned him, and stories didn't match. They were detained, and it was when we switched them from one car to another that we knew we had our people, when the officers found approximately $20,000 in cash stuffed under the back seat of the car. They, of course, said we had the wrong suspects, and the young lady who was with them accused us of planting $20,000 in the back seat, which is something a typical officer carries around with him every day just to throw down and incriminate innocent people. And luckily, our officers are really in tune to the styles, and we're able to pick up on this rather quickly. They're going to get a lot of time for this.
I like that, a real fashion risk. Well, in our next story, the crime's the same, bank robbery, but what happens is a whole nother matter.
This guy doesn't just encounter a department of detectives. No, this man comes under the scrupulous scrutiny of someone who is easily and wrongly underestimated, the meter-maid.
Back about a year ago, we had a bank robbery that caught our attention because it was kind of unusual.
I'm a member of the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, And sometime last year, I assisted the Cleveland Police Department in an investigation of a bank robbery they had there in the city.
I was making my rounds, and I came upon this expired meter, and I thought something was strange about this because the truck sitting beside it was running.
Not only did he leave his truck running, he forgot to feed the meter. So while he's inside robbing the bank, the meter maid comes along.
And I thought to myself before issuing the ticket that someone could possibly steal this truck because it's abandoned and running at the time. So after 12 minutes of waiting, I went ahead and issued it the citation. Then proceeded to go inside the bank, and when I went inside the back door waiting on the elevator, several ladies walked outside the bank that was employees there saying that the bank had just been robbed. I put two and two together and realized the ticket that I had wrote to the truck in the front that was running could have been the robbers. I waited for the first officer on the scene to present the ticket to him with the license plate number.
So we was able to check the license plate on there, and then when we ran it down, we was able to find his residence and go out there, and when he come home, we was waiting on him.
I went to the suspect's house and I waited to see if he would return, and several hours later he did.
Get out of the truck. That's investigation bank robbery. What are you talking about?
When I apprehended him, he had money bulging out of all his pockets.
What bank robbery? I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about, man?
And I advised him of his rights and that he was under arrest for bank robbery. He said, "What bank? What robbery?"
Quit harassing me, man.
Well, what's this right here?
That's my welfare money, man.
What about this?
That's a dang ticket that Meter-Maid gave me.
At that time, he was placed in custody, and thanks to the good work of the Meter-Maid, the subject was apprehended.
Even though he was arrested for robbing the bank, he still had to pay my parking fine. What a dumb criminal.
She took that personally. My parking fine.
Don't mess with that woman.
Hey, maybe in school you read the Victor Hugo novel Les Miserables.
French? Whoa, getting a little highbrow here, aren't you? Well, our next story updates that plot with a piece of pizza. A two-time offender makes the huge mistake of pilfering some pepperoni and is about to pay dearly for it. See how a petty theft can add up to huge consequences.
What this man did had everyone talking.
Normal people of goodwill don't pick on kids. I mean, he's a 27-year-old, 6'5" man, and he's picking on a 7-year-old child. In my book, that's a mean-spirited bully.
He was a repeat offender who grabbed a slice of pizza from a little girl, even though he had $30 in his pocket. Under California's tough 3 strikes law, that slice of pizza could cost him 25 years to life behind bars.
It just seems to me that for what would be a misdemeanor, if a person with no record did it, that to sentence somebody to 25 years to life because of his record, under any circumstances, is excessive.
Maybe so, but to take that kind of risk, that must have been some kind of pizza.
In Norman, Oklahoma, it is illegal to read comic books while driving an automobile.
The lady in our next story didn't think there was anything comical when an officer in Chesapeake, Virginia pulled her over. After all, she was just following a law that she knew by heart. See what we mean in tonight's installment of America's Dumbest Excuses.
One day I'm monitoring traffic, watching a stop sign, and I see this lady. She just blows the stop sign, goes right through the stop sign, right around the corner. So I pull in after, activate the lights, and pull her over and everything, and I go up and I ask her, I said, "Ma'am, you know the reason why I stopped you?" She's like, "No, I have no idea." I said, "Well, you ran right through that stop sign, blew that stop sign." She said, "It's right on red." I said, "Right on red?" I said, "Ma'am, first of all, that only applies to traffic lights. And second of all, you still have to come to a complete stop." So I'm sitting there arguing with her, and I finally, it's just, I see it's pointless, but she keeps arguing the point. She's like, "It's right on red. She's like, "I've been doing this for 20 years. I said, "Ma'am, you've been driving through stop signs for 20 years? And she's like, "Yeah." I gave her a ticket, but I have a feeling she's still turning right on red.
You follow that turn right on red rule, don't you, Daniel?
Yeah, no, if I see a police car around, I usually just sit petrified, assuming I look guilty, even though I haven't done anything. But our next crook did something. All right, it brings together some of the most obtuse elements I could imagine. A jilted lover, a house on fire, and professional wrestling. Follow closely.
Yo, fellas, up here. If burning passion causes you to set your lover's house aflame, get off the roof first. When a former wrestler exploded a few Molotov cocktails to set fire to his ex-girlfriend's house, he almost became a hunk of burning love. Luckily, she was smart enough to be out of the house, but he may have been in one too many headlocks. In the end, he saw the error of his ways.
Lord, I ran out of money. I'm sorry.
Burning love, okay. Sometimes it doesn't take much to outsmart a criminal. Other times, however, we have to take our hats off to the law enforcement officers who come up with the amazing stories to get suspects to come clean. Here's one that would even pass a white glove test.
We had received a call to a burglary at a gas station located at 6th and Main. When we arrived at the gas station, it was quite obvious that whoever had committed the offense was a former employee, because they had shimmied in, got inside, and found the money where it had been hidden underneath some shop towels in the back of the gas station. So only somebody with intimate knowledge of the premises would have been able to find that. We also found a pair of cotton work gloves laying on the floor that hadn't been there the night before. When we picked up the gloves and looked at them, they just literally reeked, just like a garbage container or a trash dumpster. When we were talking to the manager of the service station, we asked him if there had been any disgruntled employees or customers or what have you. He told us that he had just let a guy go that had left his gas station and gotten a job working on the sanitation trucks here in Stillwater. Well, putting two and two together, we got the former employee to drop by after his tour of duty with the sanitation department. We laid the gloves out in front of him in a plastic bag, and
he continually denied the allegations that we were making at him for burglary, and running out of every idea that I could think of to try to get this guy to crack, I finally said, I've got fingerprints. And the individual said, well, that's impossible. I was wearing gloves at the time. And then I said, that's okay, I got fingerprints on the inside of your cloth gloves that you dropped at the scene.
Bruce looked him right square in the eye, and with the most sincere expression he had ever given anybody, he said, we're going to take those gloves, we're going to send them to the FBI.
And they could turn them inside out and remove fingerprints off the glove.
They're going to put fingerprint dust on them, raise your fingerprints, turn the gloves inside out, and photograph those fingerprints.
By a new spectro gas chromatograph method, he believed it, which has nothing to do with fingerprinting, by the way.
And the guy literally rolled over and started telling us the whole story about how he broke in, how he took the money, and had all of the cash in his apartment still. All in all, pretty dumb.
Here's Daniel with ADC Headlines.
A man attempted to steal a 600-pound safe from an insurance office. He discovered much too late that it's unwise to stand on a staircase below such a large, unwieldy object. All right, I'm going to spare you the Wile E. Coyote-like details, but suffice it to say that the man understood the gravity of the situation much too late. Now, something for people who believe that Star Trek is based on a real captain's log. Burglars in Larch Barrens, Maryland, tried to cut their way into a safe using a laser tag gun. Okay, truth is stranger than science fiction, folks. A man stole a car, but being in an unfamiliar neighborhood, he lost his bearings and stopped someone to ask directions. Ah, but the odds were against him. The person he happened to select was the car's owner. Oh yeah, the police who responded were very helpful in getting the thief where he needed to go. And that closes the file on ADC Headlines. News ripped from somewhere near the back of your local newspaper. Debbie?
We're off to Ogden, Utah to hear about a guy who's so desperate to make a drug deal that he's willing to ignore blatant warning signs that he's dealing with police. Once again, why do you think we call them dopes?
I was working undercover, and me and my partner were out doing undercover narcotics buys. I made a transaction over the CB radio with a truck driver. I walked over to his truck and climbed in. I was wearing a body wire transmitting device. On the dashboard of his truck is sitting a real fancy radar detector, the kind that has the lights that go up and down to measure for the meter. And as we're sitting there making this negotiation, I'm watching the meter and it is just bouncing up and down to my voice. So I'm kind of panicking. The guy looks around, he says, there must be some cops around here. And so I tell him, yeah, the cops are always driving through here. But as the deal progressed, he was really worried about that, watching that, and so was I. And he kept looking around for the cops. He says, the cops have got to be around here somewhere close. And I told him, yeah, the cops are around here closer than you think. And then we completed the transaction. I arrested him.
Okay, you're under arrest, police officer.
And I knew you were a cop.
That's right, man. Come on, get out of here.
See, I told you they were closer than you thought.
Hey, in the segment we call I'm Where, You're Who, we like to honor those criminals who've distinguished themselves in forms of self-capture that go beyond the call of duty. Now, this man in Orem, Utah learns the hard way that when you blurt out the truth, you hurt your alibi.
I got a call of a guy trying to pass a fraudulent prescription, so I went up to arrest him, and he ran from us. So after a short chase, we caught him and took him to jail. The case went to court, and he decided that he was going to act as his own attorney. And I was up on the stand testifying. He was cross-examining me, and as I was telling my story as to what had happened, all this time he'd been saying that we had the wrong guy. He wasn't involved or anything like this. He wasn't even there. As I was telling the story as to what had happened, he suddenly blurted out.
Well, that's not the way I remember it.
I remember looking over at the judge, and he was snickering, and the county attorney was laughing, and it pretty much made our case for us because he had just admitted that he was there. Yeah, that was a real dumb thing to do. He not only made a dumb criminal, but he made a dumb attorney, too.
As promised, we've come to the wild women portion of our show. And I can't think of anyone more appropriate to introduce it than you, Debbie.
Oh, yeah, right. Me, a wild woman.
You're wild. You're wild.
I don't compare with the naked truth hiding behind a badge in this story. And as the title says, we're not making this one up.
Oftentimes, officers get called on loud party calls. Another officer and I responded to a home one night that was quite unusual. We walked up to the door, knocked as we normally do. We were greeted by a young lady, invited us into the house, and we then faced about a half a dozen middle-aged women sitting around listening to music. One of the women asked, first of all, why we were there and why there were two of us. And we responded that we always have two officers on a loud party call. And one lady spoke up and said, well, officer, we don't bite. And then another woman spoke up real quick and said, speak for yourself, Susan. And we started looking at each other thinking, something's not right here. Then one of the ladies asked what kind of music we wanted to dance to.
We noticed a little old Volkswagen pull up outside, and this very well-built, tight uniformed cop got out of the car and seen us and dove underneath the car and started climbing away. And they looked out and they seen the officer out there, and then they looked at us. They said, well, aren't you the stripper? And we said, no.
You guys aren't the real strippers?
We said it was okay, you know, but asked them how much they're charging the stripper.
But we don't know the end of the story. Did they dance for him or not?
Yeah, well, we're just going to leave it there, Deb. You know what happened to those officers happens to me all the time.
No,
you know?
it doesn't.
Yeah, you're right. And if you folks at home were thinking we were about out of time, you're right, too. If you think we'll be back with more stories next week, you're right again.
We've got a smart audience.
Ah.
If you've got a lead on a story, or you just can't wait till next week for more state-of-the-art stupidity, visit our website at www.dumbcrimes.com.
We want to thank you for joining us tonight and offer our special thanks to the police officers who helped make this show possible. They're doing more than just doing a job when they go to work each day, and we appreciate them for it.
You're absolutely right. And now, as always, we hope that we've all learned from others' mistakes.
But if you haven't, we just might see you next week on America's Dumbest Criminal.
Goodbye.